Hey everybody, this is Matt from TeknoAXE Royalty Free Music. How are you guys doing? Okay, so last week I asked you guys to ask me questions for a question and answer video that I would post this week. So this is going to be it right here. A lot of you guys asked some great questions, and so it's now time for me to fulfill my end of the bargain and do this thing. Also, we're doing face cam, so hopefully you guys like my ugly mug here. And let's get to the questions. All right, so Alpha Hex asks, how long does it take to create one of your songs? It is quite impressive you managed to create hundreds of cool songs in a relatively short time. And that is a great question, Alpha Hex. Basically, the answer depends on what I'm actually doing. So if I'm doing something like a dubstep or a drum and bass track or glitch hop, something that is electronic dance music, a lot of my time is basically spent building up new instruments to basically sound cool, bring something new to the table, but also kind of conform and basically mimic what a dubstep or a drum and bass track is supposed to do. So there's a little bit of time basically building instruments up, whether from scratch. A lot of times I build instruments straight from scratch using Native Instruments Massive, which is an excellent synthesizer to use, or using some of the presets to basically mash together in some of the instruments built specifically for Propellerhead Reason. So doing all this and then composing the notes and making all the effects work right can basically take up to about 8 to 10 hours, maybe even 15. A lot of the new songs that I'm producing lately, as of this year, have been focusing really a lot on quality. So it's taking a little bit more time than what I usually do in prior years to basically make everything sound as good as possible. For orchestra and soundtracks, it's also a similar amount of time, but the focus on things is a little bit different. Basically, with soundtrack and orchestra, I basically have to allow things like violins and violas, trumpets, and French horns to load up onto my computer. And I have some really top-notch instruments that I bought a while back that I can actually use now because I have a new computer. But these instruments take a long time to load up. To give you an idea, one patch of a violin can cost up to 1 gigabyte of memory on my computer. And I don't really have the fastest drives yet. I've been meaning to replace my external drive with an internal SSD to be able to assist in loading up these patches a lot more quicker. But right now, a big portion of my time is basically spent waiting to load these patches up so I can get to composing. And then once those patches have been loaded up, you've got to basically choose the right notes, basically write what's in your heart, but make sure that everything that you write with one instrument meshes with another instrument that you've already put down. So there's a big balance between what the trumpets are doing, say, and what the strings are doing, or maybe what your tuba is doing, or your bass. I would say it would take about 8 to about 16 hours. It depends, again, what I'm doing, and if I were to write anything that was longer than 5 or 6 minutes, then I could probably take an entire day to produce just one track, for sure, yeah. But with a lot of tracks, I don't really need that kind of complexity. In fact, a lot of you guys have asked me to write background tracks, which I am still doing. But the background tracks are not necessarily there in terms of complexity. And in fact, one of the most recent examples that I have is Irish Tin Whistle. Irish Tin Whistle really only has 2 or 3 instruments doing the melody and harmonies, and a little bit of percussion to kind of help along the flow of the mix. And really, tracks like that really only cost about 2 to 3 hours to produce. There is an inherent irony to all this, of course. Sometimes I spend a long time producing these really complex tracks, and it may be the timing of which that I release these tracks, but some of these really complex tracks aren't really received all that greatly. Whereas things like Irish Tin Whistle, once again, Irish Tin Whistle was one of the greatest received tracks of last month. And really, once again, it's really a simple track that I spent maybe 2 or 3 hours. You guys really liked it, so I can't argue with that. And I guess that's one of the lessons of YouTube is that you can't really pick and choose what is a hit to your audience. You just gotta throw it out there, throw everything out there, and basically see what sticks. Ahmed Sheik asks, how much time does it take to make one track? Again, this is basically a similar answer, although maybe I can kind of elaborate on what goes down. When I write a track, basically I start with nothing, and the first step is basically to put an instrument down and start writing notes on it. Usually, if I have an idea of what I'm trying to do, I basically will select the instrument that I think will fit most with the specific track. So I'm going to select Irish Tin Whistle once again as my example because I specifically set out to write a Celtic track with that one. And so obviously the first thing that I selected was the tin whistle. And basically what you do is you basically start writing notes and then basically mold the notes until you find something that you really like or it agrees with what you're trying to do. Cyan Ninja Warriors asks, can you make more Asian style tracks? I love all your music, man. Keep up the outstanding work. Thank you very much. And I can definitely make more Asian style music. I will never put that fully down. It's just sometimes it may take me a while to basically get around to doing that sort of thing because I have such a genre spread that usually I take a while to get around to everything that I need to do. So don't worry, I'll be making more Asian style songs soon. Next Gen Insanity says, do you create commissions? Question mark. And the answer to that is sometimes I have, although it's not the focus of my channel as of yet. Really, with all the time that I spend making music and balancing it out with the rest of my life, it's basically been a challenge to kind of basically keep up with that and then include commissions on the side. I have actually done a couple. The RPG Minx's latest outro song is basically a commission done by me. She paid me some money to do that. And I've actually accepted money to do other commissions as well. But once again, I've been trying to basically balance that out with what I'm doing here on YouTube. New World Shogun asks, what equipment do you use to record and produce your music? Who or what was your original inspiration to want to be a musician? Okay, so for the second part of that question, I have to say that I've actually always been sort of a musician. Back in 5th grade, I took up the trombone and started playing for my symphonic band, and then branched out to jazz and pep band and march band, everything under the sun that involved basically playing a trombone up until I graduated high school. From there, I basically learned to play the guitar 4 years later, and ever since then, I've been starting to write my own music from like the second month that I was learning how to play guitar. So really, it came natural to me, I have to say. It basically was something that I started doing right out of the gate, and I can't really explain it except for a lot of the time when I was younger, there was a constant orchestra playing in my head, constant music, or constant singing. So I guess this would be kind of an expression of that. This is me kind of getting those ideas and those tunes from my head out from my head into the real world, so everybody else can hear what I'm hearing inside my head, right? That's not totally insane. The other part of the question, what equipment do I use? Mostly it's software at this point. I do have a guitar, which you can see in the background over there, but it runs through a Pod HD 500 from Line 6. And it's an alright processor, but lately I've felt that the sound quality of the HD 500 doesn't really match up with what other things that I do. So a lot of the things that you hear, including orchestra and even some of the rock, has been basically generated through some of the plugins that I have simply because it sounds better. For instance, some of my industrial tracks actually have a great industrial patch by East West called Ministry of Rock 2. And I use a lot of these instruments, basically like East West, Hollywood strings, Hollywood brass, Hollywood woodwinds, to basically enable me to basically sound the best that I can. And the same goes for electronic dance music too. I use a lot of third-party instruments that are specifically programmed for Propellerhead Reason, which includes the Zero synth and also the Antidote synth as well. I'll link all these things in the description below. But these are like instruments that I've bought in addition to Propellerhead Reason that basically allow me to make the sounds that I need to make these music great, right? As far as equipment goes, I have this really great computer that I pieced together this year. It was something that I started building last November, and I finally completed it in May. And I brought it to life. I feel like Frankenstein, but basically it's an i7 6700K 4 gigahertz processor that I've got in this tower. And I also have 32 gigabytes of memory. And this has allowed me to basically push my music to the limit here and utilize things like crescendos and decrescendos that I haven't been able to do before. It's really great. I can actually swell an orchestra now, and it sounds fantastic. As opposed to when I had my laptop, which only had like 6 gigs. Really, when I tried to swell something or, crescendo an instrument or two from the East-West pack, it would really just not turn out all that great. It would jump around, it would just like crackle. It would like feel the weight of the memory that these instruments take. So it's been really great to kind of like be able to bust these barriers down and be able to produce what I want. As far as DAWs go, which is what producers produce music on, I use Cockos Reaper. And Cockos Reaper is really an excellent platform, not just because it's great, but it's also cheap to license as well. If you want, you can evaluate Reaper. I'll provide the link down below. You can evaluate Reaper for 2 weeks up to a month, I believe. Then after that, the license for you to be able to use Reaper really is only $60, which is great because a lot of these DAWs cost really upwards of $400 or $500 to use. Especially, Cakewalk Sonar or Steinberg's Cubase. They cost a ton of money to even just get your foot in the door. But with Reaper, it does everything that they do and even more. And basically, it costs $60. So how could you? I mean, that's a great deal. So if you want to get into music production, definitely check them out. They're awesome people, and I love their software. It's awesome. Zox says you'd produce a lot of songs very quickly. Is it your normal rhythm, or would you like to sometimes invest more time on some tracks? Thanks. All right, Zox. Excellent question. It is kind of a rhythm, and it's the curse and the benefit of producing videos that are on songs for YouTube, because like everybody else, I try to keep a schedule on what I produce, so you guys have a constant stream of new material to work with. Also, I kind of stress that sometimes you guys actually run out of material for me. Like when you use my tracks a lot, I get worried that you guys might run out of songs to use. So there's that. Sometimes I do wish that I could spend more time on songs, but other times I feel like that if I spent more time on the tracks, I would overthink things, and the music that would come from that wouldn't necessarily be better. It's a give and take. I have actually been taking a little bit more time on my tracks this year as opposed to the prior years. So it's basically it's been a give and take, I guess. I want to basically be able to produce music on a professional level, and I feel like I'm getting close there, but obviously some projects take more time than others. JDMS Word 14 says, "What a great service you do and great quality. I should watch the older Q&A videos. Do you recommend it?" I think that's what they're actually. Do I recommend the old question and answer videos? I think so. I don't know. I haven't watched those videos in quite a while, and quite honestly, I'm just about as good as I am right now in those videos, which means I don't really do them all that often, and so I'm not the best. But I provide some good answers there as well. So if you want to watch them, watch them. I will not object to that. Raven Poe says, "Where do you get your inspiration from when you compose creepy, scary, and sad, melancholic, depressing tunes? I've used your music a lot in horror videos." So I guess the answer to that, I used to play Fable 2, which was a game that was on Xbox 360, and I also played the original Fable games as well. And so a lot of my inspiration for really creepy and laid back and haunting music comes from that soundtrack specifically. I think that the music work that they did on those two games specifically were phenomenal in terms of basically mood and also being background music for that kind of video game as well. So, and also just as a general thing, I feel like video game music has been one of my greatest inspirations recently for basically picking up music as well. I forgot to say that, but basically that's one of the major inspirations because I feel like video game music back then was very revolutionary, and a lot of people were saying that it allowed a lot more freedom for composers rather than movies at that time. I don't know if that's actually the case today since video games are basically being rushed out the door, but back in the 2008 2009 area, that's where a lot of the composers expressed a lot of joy over the freedom of music that they were allowed to make. TOCCL asks, "I was just wondering, how do you manage your time with making so many songs and so many different types of genres that you do?" Well, that is a good question because I don't just do music. I have a life with that I have outside of YouTube. I would have to say though that when I compose music, it's usually at night when everybody else is asleep. So I have a little bit of a night streak going. I'm kind of a night bird in that regard, in that I compose most of my music at night, and usually when I post something, it's usually at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So I do it to myself. Sometimes it's not the greatest because I'm not awake as much as I should be during the daytime, but it's something that I love, so I love working on it. So I love seeing you guys react to what I post, and I love the comments and stuff like that. So it's all worth it to me. Iridium Core asks, "Which piece of music do you have the most difficulty making?" Once again, I would say probably the electronic dance music and also the orchestral soundtrack music. Those are the types of music that I have the most difficulty making. And the reason for that is basically because I want to be able to accurately fit the genre that I'm trying to go after. With anything like trance or dubstep or drum and bass, there's a very specific definition that basically makes it that kind of genre. And so basically, if you fall too forward or too much or too little outside the bounds of those genre definitions, then do you really expect your track to be considered that genre, even though you say it? And also, you want to basically meet the expectations of your fans. And so those are basically the ones that I kind of stress out the most. Also, with the orchestra ones, basically getting the notes right takes the most time and is the most challenging to do. And that has to do with your knowledge of theory, basically your ear for how it sounds like. Sometimes it takes me a while just to get the right chord down to make the song progress to the next level. Rogue Point asks, "How can you afford to make such awesome songs for free?" Basically, I can afford all this stuff because of people like you. And the reason why I say that is because even though a lot of you download my music for free on my website, a lot of you guys stream my music off of Spotify as well. And also, some of you even buy my music on iTunes and other platforms as well. And I've been able to take the funds generated by the sales and the Spotify streams and invested in new things like this new computer, the instruments, the East and West package, the Hollywood strings and the Hollywood brass and Hollywood woodwinds. That came in a package that cost me about $1,000. But through the music sales and the revenue generated by those sales and streams, I've been able to upgrade my setup so I can continue to push the limits on what the quality of music that I produce. Patrick Jacquemont asks, will you make more epic music in the style of Two Steps from Hell? What about suspense music by Mission Impossible or like Mission Impossible? And I would say, yeah, sure. I'm up for doing that. Once again, I'm coming around to different genres here and there. Epic music is one of the more challenging things that I do, so it'll take some time, but I'll get some more music like that out there, I promise. 7 Joshua 77 asks, what software do you use for making music? Let's see, I went over Propellerhead Reason. I also went to Cakewalk Sonar for a little bit. Cockos Reaper is what I use now. But really, I mean, there's a bunch of different things that you can basically use in terms of software. There's one of these software platforms that I really want to break into sometime is Ableton Live. Maybe I'll go back to Fruity Loops. I haven't actually, or what it's called is FL Loops. Maybe at some point I'll go back there and try to make some music there. But I'm really comfortable with Reaper and also Propellerhead Reason. So that's basically what I use right there. Can I request a personal song by Spinal Prison? And this is one of the things that I have struggled with. I have not really found the time to do personal music for everybody. I understand the sentiment of wanting your own music, obviously, and I totally understand that. But in order for me to make personal music for everybody, it would sacrifice a lot of time that I take to basically write music for the channel for everybody. And so my focus is specifically on music for everybody to use. You know, Jacksepticeye and the RPG Minx and Mr. Fruit, all those guys, they never paid me anything to make music for them. They just found a piece of music that they liked and made the outros work for them. Especially Jacksepticeye, he integrated his spiel, his outro with his speech at the end. And, you know, he did the punch like the boss, and I'll see you guys in the next video. He added that to the song, and he made it his own intro. And so, really, I feel like you guys can basically do some of the same things with that song or another song. You can basically use some of the creativity to basically work around that. Apple 8 Studios asks, what is your favorite movie? And I have to say, Empire Strikes Back. Although this summer I had a couple of favorites, actually. One was Star Trek Beyond. Is basically the best Star Trek movie in a while, since Star Trek 6 actually. And then also Kubo and the Two Strings. I can't recommend this movie more. It's basically a movie that has a lot of heart in it. The stop motion is fantastic. The music is great, and the story is something different and not really as cookie cutter as what it could have been. So I really can't stop recommending that because Kubo and the Two Strings really didn't do too well in the box office. So I'd really like to see them earn a little bit more money. And for what it's worth, go see it. You'll have a blast on the movie, I promise. Destro 7000 said, what made you first decide to make royalty-free music for use by anywhere by anyone? Did you see some injustice anywhere once and decided you wanted to help? What do you think of copyrighted music being difficult? So, I guess one of the reasons why I started royalty-free music in the first place is because back when I started actual YouTube, It was actually 2009, and I wasn't actually a royalty-free music. But I did my YouTube thing, trying to make myself a film star for some reason. And the thing that I always ran up against was music. Like, I always had a scene that I wanted to film, and I didn't have the music to back it up. And so eventually, I basically went back to my roots and started writing music, really. Um, and I did use Kevin MacLeod music for a little bit. But, his music is great, but it wasn't really for me. And I decided I wanted to add my own to the mix, I guess you could say. I started really slow, and eventually, royalty free music basically took over my channel, and here I am today. Back then, I knew about the content ID match system and also the copyright flagging system, and I actually had one of my videos affected by this as well. And for the last question, what do you think of copyrighted music being difficult or limited to use? No, I don't know. I feel like artists are being greedy in some ways. In other ways, I can kind of understand. What I can't understand, though, is the cases where public domain tracks start getting claimed by people. I feel like that's a bad rap right there. If a music piece is public domain, there should be no worry whatsoever that something gets claimed. For instance, one of the earlier things that I did in 2012 was basically a Christmas version, my own version of "Oh Holy Night," it was a really pretty one, but it's a track that ended up getting that video locked for the remainder of the year until early next year. It was locked by Sony or Warner Brothers or something like that. It was claimed by then, and I couldn't get the claim released by them until they basically got around to me like earlier in January. So it was a really frustrating moment to me, and something that I feel like it shouldn't have happened, just because it was my own rendition of "Oh Holy Night" that shouldn't have basically tripped their content ID management system at all. So I feel like music companies in general are basically just vultures trying to get their hands on everything. And for me, one of the biggest challenges of maintaining this music program here, this royalty free music site, is basically fending up for your rights as well. Because sometimes my tracks do end up on content ID management systems. And from there, when you guys start reporting that your videos are starting to get claimed, it is now up to me to basically contact those companies, issue takedown notices, and tell them that they're not legally able to actually claim these tracks because they are mine. Nymeria asks, which one of your tracks is your favorite? And thank you. Wow, there's so many tracks to choose from, though, right? I would have to say that for this year, actually, my favorite tracks are the two drum and bass tracks that I did at 160 BPM. Those would be Human Institution remixed for drum and bass, and also Breathing, Oxygen, and Gasoline. Those tracks seem to have a lot of energy for me. They're not necessarily my most popular tracks from this year, but for me, I like the energy that they drive, especially Human Institution remixed. Um, and maybe it's just that I have some very weird musical tastes. A lot of the times, I'll like a lot of tracks that maybe are not the most popular, just because I seem to have a different taste in that regards. But like I said, in those two tracks right there, they're the most energetic, and they have a lot of like just drive and a lot of attitude that I kind of remember from back in the 90s, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. RG asks, how did you meet Cherry Crush? I didn't. I have not met her yet. Although, to tell a story, I basically know of her existence because she emailed me. She was really concerned that because she used one of my tracks for one of her videos, that she was going to get flagged or have it taken down by me. And if you guys don't know, Cherry Crush is basically an adult film star. She does have an ASMR channel, but she does also do adult film star stuff. But, you know, for my stance on things, I don't mind if you guys use my music for whatever purpose you need, just as long as it's not illegal, right? I have a lot of people who actually use my music to argue political points that are on opposite sides of the spectrum. So even if you hold something, a view of sorts that I don't agree with you, it's perfectly fine for you guys to use my music on. That's fine. I love it when like people of both sides basically use my music the same, and that way it for me it seems like that people would you know they have something in common even though they don't agree on something. So that's kind of a thing that brings us together, right? But anyways, so Cherry Crush actually emailed me the winter of 2012, I believe, and she basically was came at me because she was kind of like nervous that her use of my music was something that I didn't really approve of, which I was fine with. It's fine, and I told her as such. But then she started asking me about music and how I produced it, and she was really curious about what programs that I used. So that kind of piqued my interest in what she was wanting to do there. And so I told her, and she thanked me and went her own way. And then, you know, I started following her ASMR channel because she started using my music for YouTube videos, and she's driven a lot of traffic to my page. I appreciate everybody who basically does that. And so, like, and for her, I have no problem with that as well. So I started following her ASMR stuff, and she has sang a couple of times on her videos, and her singing voice is really good, and she's on key, and she knows what she's doing. And so the idea came around that we could like collaborate on some music. She actually brought this up to me, and so we started working on a track. And let me tell you, sometimes when people bring up collaborating with me, it goes nowhere almost. You know, there are very few people that actually talk about collaboration and it gets past the first step. But with her, when she started to collaborate with me, like she would hand me tracks like in a blink of the eye. She would basically forward me like 5 or 10 tracks at a time, trying to pin down what she wanted to do on a down tempo track, for instance. And so I have to really appreciate the effort and the drive that she put into our collaborations. So you know, if she wants to collaborate again, I am all for it. I think she has incredible talent, and she just needs to unlock it and just put a little bit of polish on that, and she could probably be a star. Honestly, she's got that kind of voice. Hierosos asks, "For how long have you been making music? Within how long have you been making royalty-free music? And for how long do you intend to continue doing this?" Okay, so I've been making music since 2000, a little bit after I started learning to play guitar. Um, I'm about to come up on my 6-year anniversary for royalty-free music, and I plan on doing this forever. Cloud X Soldier asks, "Any chances you want to work with more game developers on music? I know you're working with some friends from Crimson Knights, and like them, we are in need of an audio junkie." Crimson Knight is a video game that I've been working on with the Crimson Knight people, and I am actually very excited to see this game come out because I put a lot of work and effort into the soundtrack. Um, I even designed some of the special effects using native instruments, Massive. I designed some of the 8-bit effects that went into the game as well. And so the reasoning behind that, and by the way, I'm keeping all of the rights to the music that I produce for them. And that kind of gets around them having to pay me because they're not really a very big studio. They don't have a lot of money, but I get to keep the music. And if the game ends up really popular, I can say that I contributed to that. And it's something to put on the resume, because one of the things I really want to do is write for video game music. And so if you have any projects, let me know the terms. I'll try to see what I can do in terms of collaborating on you. The Crimson Knight project took about 7 or 8 weeks to do. I staggered it out, writing those tracks in between the other tracks that I released during that time. If you saw, there was basically our 7 or 8 track series that I basically released 1 week at a time for you guys. So it's been a really great thing, and maybe I can do one in the future. I want to basically eventually be able to write as a profession for video game music, if that is at all possible. Glorious Paprika Chips asks, how do you make a living as your music is royalty-free music? Uh, that's a good question. My actual profession is electrical engineer, and it's something that is a good job, but it's something that I use to kind of support my habit in music. Also, sometimes I end up on the unemployed list as well, as to right now, actually. I was working for Microsoft as a contract engineer, but my 18 months ran out, and I guess it's law around here that you can't work for Microsoft for longer than 18 months. After 18 months passes, you have to take a break, and then you have to wait 6 months before you work for them again. So right now I'm looking for work and also spending the extra time maybe trying to restart this channel and basically bring my channel to the next level. So hopefully that's not too much of a bummer. I know the economy is not the greatest already, so I understand everybody's feelings about that, because believe me, it's affected me too as well. Alright, so that's it for the question and answer video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know how you felt in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.